All right, let's move on to Jon Stewart, who, Ryan, hosted a debate with your colleague, Murtaza Hussain, and who was it?
Yair Rosenberg.
Yair Rosenberg was on it. But Jon Stewart basically covered this issue more broadly on his show.
Kind of zeroed in on that, yeah.
Yeah, in a way that really seemed to resonate with a lot of people. Let's roll one clip of that here.
Dear God, if you insist on this plan, if you think that ends Hamas, I believe we in the United States have a banner you can use. It's a little wind damaged, but equally delusional. Look, the United States is Israel's closest ally, Israel's big brother in the fraternity of nations, Israel's work emergency contact. Maybe it's time for the U.S. to give Israel some tough moral love.
This is shameful. There has to be accountability for these war crimes.
No targeting civilians in war.
Stop the war crimes and the atrocities and end the war today. It could happen right now.
Right now! Thank you! These atrocities must be... So I'm being told the administration was talking about Russia bombing Ukraine. I apologize. Also a war crime. But I'm sure they're giving equally stern advice to Israel.
The Biden administration is urging Israel to be much more careful, to be more cautious.
How Israel does this matters.
Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians.
We want to see the government of Israel take steps to minimize civilian harm.
Be more surgical and more precise.
Be more careful.
Hey, Israel! Take it to the nuts. Could you please be more careful with your bombing? It's good advice. But really, couldn't the United States have told Israel that when we gave them all the bombs? There are bombs. This is like your Coke dealer coming in with an 8-ball and going, don't stay up all night. Don't. Sleep is very important. You got to sleep.
So the problem, funny, good stuff, biting, like this is the Jon Stewart that we love. The problem I had with this is that when he came out later and hosts this debate between Yair Rosenberg and Maz Hussain, Maz, and people should go watch the whole thing, it was among the most kind of obtuse and dense I've seen Jon Stewart be in an interview. Maz was making the point that the U.S. should either be a fair broker between the Palestinians and the Israelis and actually get towards peace, rather than what they're doing now, which is basically unconditional support for one side and not even talking to the other side, except some Abbas figures who are not remotely creditable among Palestinians. So we're not engaged in any kind of fair, serious way leading to it. He said, so either do it fairly, which we're not going to do, or step aside. Get out. And Maz's argument is that if the United States kind of withdraws its blank check, withdraws its unconditional support for Israel, that could actually help Israel. That would enable Israel's need to compromise with its neighbors rather than enabling its worst impulses, which are never to compromise and continuing to annex, create more settlements, more conflict, manage the conflict so that you can appease the kind of far right, which wants complete control of the West Bank, the far right that wants complete control of the Gaza Strip, although that element is now creeping well across the entire Israeli spectrum on the heat of this moment. With the U.S. offering unconditional support, that political element within Israel is kind of buttressed and is able to then push aside any elements that say, well, no, why don't we compromise? Because we live here. Like, we're going to have to live with these neighbors for hundreds and thousands of years. So let's find a solution here. You don't need a solution if the U.S. is going to support you. So Maz's argument was, the U.S. backs away, then they're forced into actually doing some sort of compromise here. Jon Stewart and Yair's response to that was to kind of make these dumb, stale 20-year-old jokes about how the United States can't wave a magic wand and influence world affairs everywhere in the world. They never addressed his very specific point about why, in fact, they could, which is beside the point that all of the kind of money and weapons that we're giving are making the entire thing possible. Like we talk about a magic wand. We're not giving them magic wands. We're giving them exploding wands all the time, and they keep dropping them on people. And that is the thing that is driving them forward. At the same day that this was happening, Bibi Netanyahu posted a statement bragging about a completely absurd Mark Penn Harris X. That like he's the last guy on earth who actually thinks Mark Penn is doing like real credible polls. But so Mark Penn posted this poll
Clinton
saying,
acolyte.
yeah, just the worst person on the planet, objectively speaking. And so
I want to see you rank
yes.
your worst people. Actually, that would be a fun.
There's good Mark
sometime.
Penn stuff in I think most of my books. But anyway, so the poll that Mark Penn claimed to have come up with said that the American people are actually more supportive of Israel than they are of the Palestinians. American public opinion is strongly against this war and strongly for a ceasefire. So, but set that aside. Pretend it's true. Netanyahu pointed at this poll and said, look, this is a result of my PR campaign that I've been doing in the United States. I have gotten the U.S. public support for this war effort. That U.S. public support will enable us to continue this war until complete victory. That's what he's telling the Israeli public. So if Netanyahu believes that American support is essential and American public opinion is essential to continuing the war, why do Jon Stewart and Yair Rosenberg think that he's wrong about that? Like, why does he think that the U.S. actually doesn't have that much influence? So that's what bothered me about the kind of contradiction between his good monologue and effectively pointing out the way that the U.S. is enabling war crimes in one place and condemning them in another place. But then when it comes to having the actual conversation, he just felt obtuse about the whole thing.
I've always found Jon Stewart to be inflexible in debate. I think it's his weakness, whereas like when he can write or work on a really clever scripted monologue, he's more biting, and I think his arguments are more finely honed or finely tuned. But in debates, actually speaking of which, Tucker Carlson just yesterday went on Lex Friedman's show, or the interview dropped yesterday, and Tucker Carlson said Jon Stewart was right in that infamous Crossfire interview. It was one of there's a super interesting interview that Tucker did with Lex Friedman, but it was one point that Tucker said, and I disagree with that actually, but it's one point Tucker said, Crossfire was fundamentally toxic because it was just about Democrats versus Republicans. It was this binary, partisan binary between Dems, Republicans, not so much even like left and right, independent. It was just Dems and Republicans, and that was like fundamentally harmful to the country. So Jon Stewart was right. So maybe, Ryan, that's a moment where Jon Stewart thrived in debate. How did Maz find the experience of going on the show?
I think he thought the questions were a little bit not well pointed. I'd say. And if you go, I think you should go watch the interview. You see that Stewart's questions. You're like, how do you even answer that? Like, what kind of question is this? Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't. It almost felt like Jon Stewart was pretty nervous and was kind of retreating to more comfortable tropes.
It's a hard thing to do.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, when I go on, let's say like CNN or something, and I'm asked to talk about like the most sensitive stuff, like I get a little nervous. I'm like, am I going to say the wrong thing here? Like, I don't blame him for that. For some reason, I'm not nervous here, even though these clips also go out to the world.
Right. They sure do. Sometimes even Russian state media.
The other dirty secret, by the way, to back up what Tucker said about Jon Stewart being right, is that most people in media, and I bet you this is your experience too, most people in media who participate in that circus think that it's a sham and think that it's actually bad for the country.
Yeah.
And are frustrated. Like, I used to be an MSNBC contributor back in the mid-2010s, and it was frustrating. You'd get on and you'd have like 45 seconds to do an answer,
hard.
and then you'd have another 45 seconds to do another answer, and then like that's it.
Yeah.
Like this is so much more. Now, 45 seconds is better than none, so that's why I do it.
Right.
But I prefer this format much better, where we can just go on and on and on, never shut up.
Although sometimes we have, guests in studio like we have right now that we're going to get to.
So we got to shut up and bring them in. Yeah.
But yes, no, it's super interesting, and I look forward to watching the full debate because, I mean, even if Stewart's questions were lacking, hosting a debate in that format, this is why I disagree on Crossfire. I think that's fundamentally a good thing, so I look forward to watching it. Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.